I thought I just needed an apology to save my marriage until I found a $45,000 cashier's check hidden in my husband's laundered shirt pocket. Tonight, I'm going to apologize to his female best friend right in front of her husband and let that 5-digit number speak for itself. When the truth gets torn open, there won't be any gray areas left either. They fall to their knees, or I walk away. My name is Nora Caldwell, and until 6 months ago, I believed my marriage was one of those steady, unremarkable success stories, the kind you don't brag about at dinner parties, but secretly feel grateful for when you watch your friends navigate their third divorces. Our life in the Stonebridge district had a rhythm I could set my watch to. Ethan would leave for Harbor Line Freight at 7:15 sharp, coffee in his company-branded thermos, kiss on my cheek that landed somewhere between routine and genuine. I'd settle into my home office by 8:30, crafting copy for Northlight Creative's pharmaceutical clients, finding 50 different ways to say breakthrough treatment without making false claims, Tuesday dinners at the kitchen island, Thursday gym sessions, Saturday grocery runs where we'd split up with our lists and reconvene at the self-checkout, joint checking account, shared calendar, coordinated schedules, the infrastructure of a functional marriage. The first crack appeared during our 5th anniversary dinner. We were at Marlowe's, the place with the exposed brick and Edison bulbs where Ethan had proposed 6 years earlier. I'd worn the green dress he used to love, the one that brought out what he called the forest in my eyes. But his phone kept lighting up on the table, messages from Bianca Rhodes cascading down the screen. "Sorry, it's about the Henderson shipment," he said, typing rapidly with his thumbs. "Bianca's handling the client interface, and they're panicking about delivery windows." Bianca Rhodes, pharmaceutical sales rep, married to Marcus, who designed bridges for the city. She'd entered our orbit 2 years ago through some networking event, and suddenly she was everywhere texting about work emergencies, showing up at our monthly game nights, becoming Ethan's go-to lunch companion when I was slammed with deadlines. "Can it wait?" I asked, watching him compose another paragraph. "It's our anniversary." He looked up with that expression I'd later recognize as carefully calibrated sympathy. "You know how this industry is. Nora, margins are tight. If we lose Henderson, that's 12% of our quarterly revenue." The waiter appeared with our entree salmon for me, strip steak for him, and Ethan finally set the phone aside. But it buzzed twice more during dinner, and each time his eyes flicked to it like a compass finding north. "Maybe you should just call her," I suggested, my salmon growing cold. "Get it sorted out." No, I'm here with you." But he said it the way you'd reassure a child afraid of thunderstorms patient, slightly condescending, already elsewhere. 3 weeks later, I found out Bianca had a spare key to our condo. I discovered this when I came home early from a client presentation that had been canceled last minute. Bianca's BMW was in visitor parking, and when I walked in, she was standing in my kitchen, watering the succulents on the windowsill. "Oh, Nora." She had the grace to look startled. "Ethan asked me to check on the plants. He said you'd both be out until 7. "The client canceled," I said, setting my laptop bag on the counter with deliberate calm. "I didn't realize you had a key." "Just for emergencies," she said, placing the key on the island like evidence she was surrendering. "Ethan thought it made sense, since Marcus and I live so close." That evening, I brought it up while Ethan loaded the dishwasher. "Since when does Bianca have our spare key?" "Since last month. Remember when you lost yours at the gym, I had an extra made and figured someone should have it nearby." He slotted plates into the rack with mechanical precision. "Marcus has one too. Technically, it's at their place. You might have mentioned it." He turned, leaning against the counter with that expression of practiced patience. "Nora, she's a friend. Both of them are. This jealousy thing, it's not attractive. It makes you seem..." "Seem what?" "Insecure, immature." The words landed like small stones, each one finding its mark. This was Ethan's particular gift, the ability to make me question my own reactions, to paint my concerns as character flaws rather than reasonable responses. Over the following months, the boundaries kept shifting. Bianca would text during date nights about urgent work situations, that required immediate strategizing. She'd call during Sunday mornings with relationship advice requests that somehow required Ethan's input, not mine. The Tuesday lunches at Copperfinch Bistro became a standing appointment, blocked off in his calendar as client development. "You're making this into something it's not," Ethan would say whenever I raised concerns. "This is how modern friendships work. Not everything has to be a threat to our marriage." But I noticed things. The way Bianca's hand would linger on his arm when she laughed. How their inside jokes had multiplied like invasive vines, choking out conversation when the four of us were together. The way Marcus had started drinking his bourbon neat instead of on the rocks, finishing his glass faster each time we gathered. I began to catalog the small betrayals, the tiny erosions of trust that Ethan dismissed as oversensitivity. The concert tickets he bought for just the two of them because you don't even like jazz, Nora. The weekend conference in Chicago where Bianca was the only colleague who attended from our city. The $300 birthday present, a designer scarf that exceeded what he'd spent on my last 2 birthdays combined. "She's going through a rough patch with Marcus." He explained about the gift. I wanted to cheer her up. This was how he operated, each gesture just reasonable enough to make my objections seem petty. Each boundary crossed with such casual confidence that I wondered if I was the one drawing the lines wrong. The ultimatum came on a Thursday evening in March, delivered with the casual certainty of someone ordering their usual coffee. "You need to apologize to Bianca," Ethan said, not looking up from his laptop. We were in the living room, him on the couch with quarterly reports, me curled in the reading chair with a manuscript I was supposed to be editing. Apologize for what exactly? For making her uncomfortable, for the passive-aggressive comments, for treating her like she's some kind of threat. He closed the laptop with deliberate finality. "She's considering limiting contact with us with me because of how hostile you've been." Hostile? I set down my red pen. "Asking why she texts you at 11:45 at night is hostile. It's work, Nora. We've been over this." On a Sunday. He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city. Classic Ethan positioning himself against the backdrop of lights like he was delivering a boardroom presentation. "I'm going to make this simple. Either you apologize to Bianca, genuinely apologize, or we're done." The words hung in the air like a blade. "You're threatening divorce because I won't apologize to your friend." "I'm trying to save our marriage by asking you to stop sabotaging my friendships." He turned, hands in his pockets, face arranged in an expression of wounded reasonableness. "This jealousy, this constant suspicion, it's poisoning everything. Marcus has noticed. People at work have noticed. You're embarrassing both of us." I studied my husband, really looked at him. The carefully styled hair, the gym-toned shoulders, the wedding ring he still wore like a prop. When had he become this stranger who could so calmly weaponize our marriage? "Fine," I said. "I'll apologize." His eyebrows lifted, surprise flickering across his features. "Really?" "On one condition. We do it at their house, with Marcus present. If this is about clearing the air and saving friendships, then everyone should be there." Ethan's relief was almost comical. That's perfect. Actually, Saturday night I'll coordinate with Bianca." Saturday night. He crossed the room, bent to kiss my forehead, a gesture so patronizing I had to clench my fists to keep from recoiling. "You're doing the right thing, Nora. You'll see. This will fix everything." After he returned to his laptop, already texting Bianca the good news, I opened my own phone and started a new note. At the top, I typed evidence log. The transformation in Ethan over the next 2 days was remarkable. He brought home flowers, white roses, my supposed favorites, though I'd told him multiple times I preferred peonies. He suggested we pick out my outfit together for Saturday, something that would show respect for the occasion. He even drafted talking points on his phone, which he tried to show me Friday morning over breakfast. "I thought you might want to prepare what you're going to say," he offered, scrolling through his bullet points. "I've outlined the main issues: your jealousy, the communication problems, the trust deficit you've created." "That's thoughtful," I said. spreading raspberry jam on my toast with methodical precision. But I think I'll speak from the heart. Just try to be sincere. Okay, Bianca will know if you're not being genuine. Oh, I'll be sincere. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything with the efficiency of someone preparing for trial. Tuesday lunches at Copperfinch 17 in the past 3 months, always from noon to 2:15, sometimes 2:30. Late-night text sessions 43 instances since January, averaging 35 messages per conversation based on the notification previews I'd screenshotted. The weekend conference in Chicago hotel receipt showing a room upgrade to a suite. Though Ethan had told me he'd stayed in a standard room, I also started paying attention to the finances with new intensity. 3 cash withdrawals of $500 each over the past 6 weeks. A mysterious consulting fee of $1,200 paid to BR Enterprises in February. The joint credit card statement showing charges at Verdant. The upscale restaurant where I'd supposedly been too busy to join them for Bianca's birthday dinner. But I needed something more. Something undeniable. I found myself thinking like a detective, noting patterns and anomalies. Ethan's gym bag, which used to live in his car, now came inside every evening. His phone, previously abandoned on counters and coffee tables, never left his possession. He'd changed his passcode. I discovered this when I tried to check the weather on his phone while mine charged. Privacy is healthy in a marriage, he said when I questioned the new password. We should maintain some independence. This from the man who had insisted on joint everything when we married: accounts, calendars, even email passwords, in case of emergencies. I called Marcus on Friday afternoon, using the pretense of confirming Saturday's plans. Hey, Nora, he answered, sounding tired. 7 o'clock. Right. That's right. I wanted to make sure you'll be there. This apology, it's important that you hear it too. A pause. To be honest, I'm not sure what this is about. Bianca says you've been difficult. Has she mentioned anything else about the situation, about her friendship with Ethan? Another pause. Longer. She says they're close, good friends, that you're reading too much into it. And you believe that, I believe. Marcus sighed. I believe what I need to believe to get through the day. The weight in his voice told me everything. He knew, maybe not the details, not the extent, but he knew something was wrong. He was just choosing the same path I'd walked for months, the careful blindness, the willful ignorance that kept the infrastructure of daily life intact. Tomorrow night will be interesting, I said carefully. Yeah, he replied. I have a feeling it will be. Saturday morning, I found the check. I was doing laundry, the mundane ritual of sorting darks from lights, checking pockets for stray receipts and forgotten chapstick. Ethan's blue Oxford shirt, the one he'd worn to his client dinner on Tuesday, had something stiff in the breast pocket. Not paper exactly, but that distinctive heavy stock that meant something official. I pulled it out, expecting a business card or parking stub. Instead, I held a cashier's check from First Maple Bank, $45,000. Payee Bianca Rhodes. The memo line read, Bridge Loan Closing. My hands went steady in that peculiar way they do when shock transforms into clarity. I smoothed the check on the laundry room counter, studying it like an artifact from another civilization. The issue, date Tuesday, March 12th, 2:45 p.m., printed right there below the bank officer's signature. The exact window of his standing lunch date with Bianca at Copperfinch Bistro. I photographed it from multiple angles, adjusting the overhead light to eliminate shadows. Close-ups of the serial number, the authorized signature, the bank's routing information. Then I scanned it on our printer at the highest resolution, saving copies to 3 different cloud drives. The check itself was a masterpiece of financial instruments, watermarks visible when I held it to the light, microprinting along the borders, the raised seal of First Maple Bank. Absolutely authentic. Absolutely damning. I called the bank's verification line, reading from the number printed on the check itself. First Maple Bank Automated Verification. Please enter the check serial number. I punched in the 16 digits, then waited. Check number 7429163844201673. Issued March 12th, 2025. Amount $45,000.00. Status uncashed. If you need to speak with a representative, please press 1. I pressed 1. First Maple Bank, this is Derek speaking. How may I assist you with check verification? I'm calling about check number 7429163844201673. I need to understand the purchasing process for a cashier's check of this amount. I can help with general information. Ma'am, a cashier's check of that amount would require the purchaser to be present at a branch with valid ID. The funds would need to be withdrawn from an existing account or provided in cash. The bank guarantees the funds, which is why these checks are considered as good as cash. And both names on a joint account would need to authorize this. Not necessarily, ma'am. If the account allows individual withdrawals, either account holder can request a cashier's check. However, a transaction of $45,000 would certainly be flagged in the account history. Thank you, Derek. That's very helpful. I hung up and pulled our most recent bank statement from the file cabinet. There it was, a transfer from our investment account to checking on March 11th, $45,000 exactly. The investment account that was supposed to be our down payment fund for the house we'd planned to buy next year. The account that required both signatures for withdrawals over $10,000 except Ethan had changed that last year, citing flexibility for market opportunities. The memo on the transfer read, Portfolio Rebalancing. I sat on our bedroom floor with the check, the bank statements, and my laptop, building a timeline. The transfer on Monday. The check issued Tuesday during their lunch, but it hadn't been cashed yet. Bianca was holding on to it. Why, what closing was worth $45,000 of our money? I searched property records for Bianca and Marcus Rhodes, their current house on Maple Street, purchased 3 years ago. No recent sales. But there was something else, a notice of default filed last month. They were behind on their mortgage by 4 months. The bridge loan suddenly made sense. Ethan was literally paying to save Bianca's house. I created a folder on my laptop, Saturday Night Apology. Into it went the check scans, bank statements, property records, and a spreadsheet I'd started building of every suspicious transaction over the past year. $7,300 in restaurant charges, mostly Tuesday afternoons. $3,000 in cash withdrawals that aligned with Bianca's birthday. Her rough patch after a supposed fight with Marcus, and the weekend of the Chicago conference. Hotel upgrades, unexplained consulting fees, a pattern of financial intimacy that went far deeper than friendship. But the check was the crown jewel. $45,000 made every other betrayal look like pocket change. I called my friend Sarah, who worked in real estate. Hey, Nora, what's up? Quick question: if someone's in default on their mortgage, what would they need to avoid foreclosure? Usually they'd need to pay the full arrears plus penalties. Why, research for a client's campaign. Distressed homeowner angle? Well, if they're 4 months behind on a typical mortgage around here, they'd need probably $30,000 to $50,000 to get current and cover legal fees. Banks might accept a cashier's check to stop foreclosure proceedings immediately. Thanks, Sarah. That's exactly what I needed. The picture was crystallizing. Bianca and Marcus were about to lose their house. Bianca had turned to Ethan, who had raided our future home fund to save hers. The Tuesday lunch wasn't about work. It was a $45,000 transaction disguised as Cobb salads and iced tea. I replaced the check in Ethan's shirt pocket, then washed and dried the shirt, hanging it back in his closet exactly where it had been. He'd never know I'd found it. Not until tonight. I spent the rest of Saturday afternoon preparing like an attorney about to deliver a closing argument. Print copies in a manila envelope. Digital copies uploaded to a shared drive I could access from my phone. A backup USB drive hidden in my jewelry box. I even emailed the entire folder to myself with a scheduled send for Sunday morning, in case something went wrong tonight. At 5 o'clock, as I applied my makeup with unusual precision, Ethan appeared in the bathroom doorway. You look nice, he said, but his eyes were wary. Remember, this is about healing, moving forward. Oh, I'm definitely moving forward. Nora. He stepped closer, hands reaching for my shoulders. I know this is hard for you, admitting you were wrong, but I'm proud of you for doing this. I met his eyes in the mirror, seeing him clearly perhaps for the first time, the calculated concern, the rehearsed sincerity, the fundamental inability to conceive that I might be anything other than the jealous wife he'd cast me as. After tonight, I said, applying lipstick in one smooth stroke, everything will be different. That's the spirit. He smiled, relief evident in the relaxation of his shoulders. Bianca's made appetizers. She really wants this to work. I'll bet she does, I thought, capping my lipstick with a decisive click. $45,000 tends to inspire that kind of enthusiasm. The hour between finding the check and leaving for dinner was spent in methodical preparation, like a surgeon laying out instruments before a procedure. First, I compiled the financial forensics, our joint account statements for 24 months, highlighted with yellow marker for every transaction connected to Bianca. The pattern was impossible to miss once you looked Tuesday withdrawals, weekend charges, a constellation of small betrayals that orbited around their friendship. The total came to $7,342, not counting the $45,000 check. I created a summary sheet. Bullet points as clean as an indictment, January through March. 19 lunch charges at Copperfinch Bistro, averaging $92 each. February 14th, $300 charge at Tiffany's. I received a $50 bouquet, Chicago weekend upgrade to suite $400, room service $280, champagne $150, cash withdrawals aligned with Bianca's emergencies, $3,000 total. Then I turned to the legal ammunition. A quick consultation with Dana Whitaker, my college friend who'd become a divorce attorney, yielded gold. I'd called her from my car, parked outside a Starbucks where the Wi-Fi was strong and Ethan couldn't trace the call. Dana, hypothetically, if someone withdrew $45,000 from a joint investment account without spousal consent and gave it to a third party, that's marital asset dissipation, she said immediately. Hypothetically, that person would be in deep trouble during divorce proceedings. A judge could order full reimbursement from their share of assets. What if there's a cashier's check but it hasn't been cashed yet? Get an emergency freeze order. If you have the check number and proof of fraudulent intent, a bank can stop payment, but you'd need to move fast. I took notes in my own shorthand, a system Ethan had never bothered to learn. And if this hypothetical situation involved a pattern of financial deception, document everything: bank records, receipts, communications. In Maryland, financial infidelity can impact alimony and asset division. Your hypothetical person might want to freeze joint accounts immediately. Thank you, Dana. Hypothetically, Nora. Her voice softened. When you're ready to drop the hypothetical, I'm here. I drafted 3 documents on my laptop. First, a formal request to First Maple Bank to stop payment on check number 742916-384-4201673, citing fraudulent withdrawal from joint marital assets. Second, a letter to Harborline Freight's internal audit department regarding potential misconduct and employee using company time for personal financial transactions, with attached evidence of Tuesday afternoon absences corresponding to large financial transfers. Third, the divorce filing Dana had walked me through, Maryland's form for absolute divorce, already partially completed with our information. At 4:30, I logged into our online banking. The investment account still showed the $45,000 withdrawal, but the checking account hadn't been touched since. The check remained uncashed, a loaded weapon waiting to fire. I initiated transfers from our joint savings to my personal account exactly half of every balance, documented with screenshots. Fair division of marital assets, Dana had advised. Nothing more, nothing less. I changed the passwords on my retirement accounts, my personal credit cards, my separate savings, the financial boundaries I should have maintained all along. Then I locked our joint credit cards for suspicious activity. Ethan would discover this eventually, probably when he tried to pay for some future Tuesday lunch with Bianca. The thought gave me grim satisfaction. The physical evidence went into 3 separate packets. one for tonight, the manila envelope containing the check scan, bank statements, and property records on the road's default, one for my safety deposit box complete documentation, including USB drives and printed records, one already in Dana's hands, delivered by courier an hour ago, with instructions to file Monday morning if I didn't call to stop her. I texted Marcus at 5:45, confirming 7 tonight. Important you're present for the full conversation. His response came quickly. I'll be there. Then, in a moment of what Ethan would probably call petty vindictiveness, I called Copperfinch Bistro. Good evening, Copperfinch. This is Bradley. Hi, Bradley. This is Nora Caldwell. My husband Ethan is a regular Tuesday customer. He usually sits at table 12 with Ms. Rhodes. Oh yes, Mrs. Caldwell. Mr. Hale and Ms. Rhodes. Every Tuesday. Would you like to make a reservation? Actually, I'm calling to settle any outstanding tabs. Could you check if there's an open balance? Let me look. Actually, yes. There's an unpaid check from this past Tuesday. $312. They left abruptly, and Mr. Hale said he'd handle it later. $312 for lunch, the same day they'd transferred $45,000. Please close it out, I said, giving him our joint card number one last time. And Bradley, please cancel any standing reservations going forward. Of course, Mrs. Caldwell. Should I note a reason? Just put down change in circumstances. At 6:15, I made my final preparation. I drafted an email to our friend group, the couples we saw monthly, the people who'd noticed the tension but politely ignored it. I didn't detail everything. Just a simple message. After tonight, Ethan and I will be separated. I wanted you to hear it from me first. The full story will become clear soon enough. Thank you for your friendship during better times. I scheduled it to send at 8:30, by which time the evening's performance would be over. The last thing I did was print a single page, a screenshot of the check, blown up to 8 by 11 inches. The $45,000 clear as daylight. This went into my purse, folded once. A final card to play if needed. Ethan knocked on the bedroom door at 6:30. Ready, we should leave in 10 minutes. Traffic might be rough. I'm ready, I called back, applying a final coat of mascara. Waterproof, though I doubted I'd be the one crying tonight. You seem calm, he observed, hovering in the doorway. That's good. Calm is good. I've had time to think about what I want to say. Just remember. He moved closer, his cologne Tom Ford, $300 a bottle filling the space between us. This is about moving forward. Bianca's willing to forgive the past few months if you're genuinely sorry. The absurdity of it, Bianca magnanimously forgiving me while holding our $45,000 nearly made me laugh. Instead, I smiled, the expression I'd practiced in the mirror. Serene, confident, dangerous. Don't worry, Ethan. Everyone's going to get exactly what they deserve tonight. He missed the warning in my words, too relieved by my apparent compliance to notice the edge beneath the surface. As we gathered our coats and headed for the door, I patted my purse, feeling the weight of the manila envelope inside. Evidence, truth, revenge. The check was still in his shirt pocket, hanging in the closet. He thought it was his secret, his proof of devotion to another woman. He had no idea it was about to become his destruction. The Rhodes house glowed with calculated warmth, every detail staged like a dinner theater production. Bianca had strung cafe lights across the living room, casting shadows that softened edges but couldn't hide the tension underneath. The coffee table held a spread worthy of a lifestyle blog: artisanal cheeses, fig preserves, crackers arranged in overlapping circles, a bottle of Malbec breathed in a decanter, 3 glasses already poured, one sitting empty. Nora. Bianca greeted us at the door, her smile bright as fresh veneers. She wore a cream cashmere sweater that probably cost more than their monthly mortgage, the mortgage they couldn't pay. I'm so glad you came. She reached for a hug. I let her, noting the slight tremor in her hands, the way her perfume, Jo Malone, peony and blush, couldn't quite mask the sharp scent of anxiety. Of course, I said, pulling back first. "Where's Marcus?" "In the living room." Her eyes flicked to Ethan, seeking reassurance. He gave her the smallest nod, the kind of silent communication developed over Tuesday lunches and $45,000 checks. Marcus stood when we entered, bourbon already in hand, neat, no ice, probably his second. His tie was loosened, jacket off, the uniform of a man steeling himself for battle. "Ethan, Nora." He didn't move to shake hands or offer the usual pleasantries. Instead, he gestured to the seating arrangement, a leather sofa facing two accent chairs, the coffee table between us like a negotiation barrier. "Please, sit," Bianca said, guiding us with the practiced grace of a woman who'd once sold pharmaceutical products to skeptical doctors. "Wine, Nora." "Just water, thank you." I needed clarity tonight, not courage. Ethan and I took the accent chairs while Bianca settled beside Marcus on the sofa. The spatial dynamics immediately clear them versus us. Except Ethan didn't realize he'd chosen the wrong side. "This is nice," Ethan began, reaching for his wine. "Thanks for hosting, for being so understanding about everything." "Understanding," Marcus repeated, the word heavy in his mouth. He took another sip of bourbon, his wedding ring catching the light as he lifted the glass. Bianca's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "Well, we're all adults here. Sometimes friendships hit rough patches. The important thing is moving forward." She looked at me expectantly, the gracious queen waiting for her subject's apology. I set my purse on the floor beside my chair, the manila envelope visible through the partially open zipper. Marcus's eyes tracked the movement, noting the bulk of papers inside. "Before we begin," I said, my voice carrying the measured tone I used for difficult client presentations, "I want to make sure we're all on the same page about why we're here." "To clear the air," Ethan supplied quickly. "To apologize for the misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings," I repeated, matching Marcus's earlier inflection. "That's one word for it." The room's temperature seemed to drop. Bianca shifted, her hand finding Marcus's knee, not affection, but anchor. "Nora," Ethan's voice carried a warning. "We discussed this." "We did. You were very clear about what you wanted. An apology. In front of everyone." I smiled, the expression sharp enough to cut. "I'm simply making sure everyone understands what I'm apologizing for." "Maybe we should eat first," Bianca suggested, already starting to rise. "I made bruschetta." "Sit down," Marcus said quietly. She froze, then slowly returned to the cushion. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my legs with deliberate calm. The staged lighting cast dramatic shadows, turning us all into characters in someone else's play. But I was about to flip the script. "Ethan says I've been hostile toward your friendship," I began, addressing Bianca directly. "That I've created problems where none existed." "Well," she said, recovering her composure, "I wouldn't use the word hostile, but there's definitely been some tension." "Tension." I nodded thoughtfully. "Like when you text my husband at 11:45 at night about emergencies." "Work emergencies," Ethan corrected. "Right. Like the Henderson shipment that didn't exist." I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolling to a screenshot. "I called Harborline's client service line. There's no Henderson account. Never has been." The silence stretched taut. Bianca's hand tightened on Marcus's knee. "You called my work." Ethan's voice pitched higher. "Due diligence. Something you should understand, given your role in operations." I set the phone on the coffee table, screen up. "But we're getting ahead of ourselves. This is supposed to be an apology." Marcus drained his bourbon and stood, moving to the bar cart in the corner. The sound of liquid hitting glass was loud in the quiet room. "I owe you an apology, Bianca," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "I should have spoken up sooner. I should have trusted my instincts instead of letting Ethan convince me I was being irrational." "Nora," Ethan started, half rising from his chair. "I'm not finished." The authority in my voice surprised even me. He sank back down. I should have said something when you started having lunch every Tuesday. I should have questioned why those lunches cost $300. I should have wondered why you needed to be at Copperfinch Bistro from noon to 2:30 every single week. It's networking, Bianca said weakly. Industry relationships. Is that what you call it? I reached for my purse, fingers finding the manila envelope. Because I have a different word for what happened this Tuesday. The room held its breath. Marcus returned to the sofa, fresh bourbon in hand, his face unreadable. Bianca looked to Ethan, panic beginning to crack her perfect facade. Whatever you think you know, Ethan began. I know you withdrew $45,000 from our investment account on Monday. I pulled the envelope free but didn't open it yet. I know you went to First Maple Bank on Tuesday during your lunch and obtained a cashier's check for that exact amount. Bianca's face drained of color. Marcus set his glass down with excessive care, as if sudden movements might shatter something beyond the crystal. I know the check was made out to Bianca Rhodes, with the memo line reading, Bridge Loan Closing. You went through my things. Ethan's attempt at outrage fell flat. I did the laundry. The check was in your shirt pocket, the one you wore to your client dinner. I finally opened the envelope, pulling out the printed scan. Would you like to see the serial number? Or should I skip straight to the part where your wife is 4 months behind on the mortgage? The last part was directed at Marcus, who closed his eyes briefly, as if absorbing a blow he'd been expecting. Marcus. Bianca's voice was barely a whisper. It's not what I asked. Not what it looks like, because what it looks like is my husband gave your wife $45,000 of our money to save your house. The house we're sitting in right now, enjoying cheese and wine while you wait for me to apologize for being hostile. I placed the check scan on the coffee table, the numbers facing up, incontrovertible evidence in black and white. The cafe lights that had seemed so charming now felt like interrogation lamps, exposing every lie, every deception, every carefully constructed excuse. Now, I said, settling back in my chair like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. Let's talk about apologies. The check scan lay on the coffee table like a grenade with the pin pulled. $45,000 in bold print. Bianca's name typed clearly in the payee field. The bank officer's signature authorizing what couldn't be explained away. This is a violation of privacy, Ethan said, but his voice lacked conviction, the words of a man grasping for higher ground as the flood rose around him. Privacy. I pulled out my phone, swiping to the voice recording app. Let me play you something about privacy. The speaker crackled to life with the automated voice from First Maple Bank, check number 7429163844201673. Issued March 12, 2025. Amount $45,000.00. Status uncashed. That's public verification, I said, stopping the recording. Anyone with the check number can confirm it exists. And here's the interesting part. I pulled out the bank statement, the withdrawal from our investment account, our house down payment fund, the money we've been saving for 3 years. Marcus picked up the check scan, studying it like an engineer examining structural failure. How long? The question hung between all of us, but it was Bianca who answered, her voice small. It's not what you think. Stop. Marcus's single word cut through her protest. Just stop. How long? The lunches started 2 years ago, I supplied, pulling out my spreadsheet, but the financial intimacy began about 8 months back. 300 here, 500 there. The Chicago weekend that was $1,200 in hotel upgrades and room service. I turned to face Ethan directly. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Or did you just think I'd keep quiet? Keep playing the jealous wife while you bled our accounts dry? It was a loan, Ethan said, jaw clenched. Bianca needed help. We needed help, Bianca corrected, reaching for Marcus's hand. He pulled away, standing abruptly. No, Marcus said, voice deadly quiet. You needed help. You told me your commissions were covering the shortfall. You said the promotion would fix everything. There was no promotion. Was there? I asked, though it wasn't really a question. Just like there was no Henderson account, no work emergencies, no client dinners. Bianca's carefully constructed composure finally cracked. You don't understand the pressure. The pressure, I laughed, but there was no humor in it. The pressure of maintaining a lifestyle you can't afford. The pressure of keeping up appearances while your house goes into default. I pulled out the property records. 4 months behind on a mortgage for a house you bought at the peak of the market. Refinanced twice to pull out equity for what the BMW, the renovated kitchen. The Tuesday lunches at Copper Finch where you and my husband played Romeo and Juliet with my money. That's enough. Ethan stood, moving toward me. We're leaving. Sit down. The command in my voice surprised us both. I'm not finished. I think we're all finished here, he said, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Really, because I haven't even gotten to the best part. I pulled out another document. This is a formal request to freeze payment on that check. It'll be filed with First Maple Bank at 9 a.m. Monday morning, unless what? Bianca's voice cracked with desperation. Unless we resolve this tonight. All of it. The truth. Laid bare. No more games. Marcus returned to his seat, bourbon abandoned. Keep going. I spread the evidence across the coffee table like tarot cards revealing the future. $7,342 in documented expenses related to your wife over the past year, not counting the $45,000. Tuesday lunches that lasted 2.5 hours. Weekend conferences that only required one employee from the local office. Late-night strategy sessions about accounts that don't exist. We never, Bianca started. I don't care what you did or didn't do physically. I cut her off. You stole from my marriage. Both of you. Ethan stole money, time, attention, respect. And you, Bianca. You took it all with a smile, playing the friend in distress while calculating how much you could extract. You're being dramatic, Ethan said, but his hands shook slightly as he reached for his wine. Dramatic. I pulled out my final document. This is the divorce filing, already prepared, ready to submit Monday morning. Maryland is an equitable distribution state. Ethan. That means marital asset dissipation gets factored into the settlement. You'll owe me that $45,000 off the top, plus half of everything else. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. I turned to Marcus. I brought copies for you too. Transaction histories, property records, the check. Whatever you decide to do with this information is your choice. Marcus took the papers I offered, his engineer's mind already calculating structural damage, points of failure, whether anything could be salvaged from the wreckage. This was supposed to be an apology, Bianca whispered, mascara finally breaking its waterproof promise. Oh, but it is, I said, leaning forward. I apologize for not speaking up when you first crossed the line. I apologize for letting Ethan gaslight me into thinking I was crazy for seeing what was obvious. I apologize for sitting through dozens of dinner parties, pretending we were all friends while you were scheming behind my back. I stood, gathering my purse but leaving the evidence spread across their coffee table like crime scene photos. But mostly, I said, looking directly at Ethan, I apologize to myself for accepting less than I deserved, for believing your lies about my jealousy being the problem, for not trusting my instincts that said a $45,000 secret was worth more to you than our marriage. Nora, please. Ethan's facade finally cracked completely. We can talk about this at home. There is no home. I changed the locks this afternoon while you were at the gym. Your things are in boxes in the garage. The doorman has been instructed not to let you past the lobby. The lie came smoothly. I hadn't changed the locks yet, but I would tomorrow. The beauty of destroying trust was that he'd never know what was true anymore. You planned this whole thing, he said, the accusation almost admiring. I learned from the best. You taught me that appearances matter more than truth, that manipulation is just another word for strategy. I picked up the check scan, holding it up to the light. This check is still uncashed. That means Bianca hasn't deposited it yet. Were you waiting for the right moment after I'd apologized and fallen back in line? Neither of them answered, which was answer enough. Here's what happens now, I said. my voice carrying the authority of someone who'd already won. The check gets voided, the money gets returned, the divorce proceeds, and this, I gestured to the four of us, the staged room, the farce of friendship. This ends tonight. You can't force us to void the check, Bianca said desperately. It's a legal instrument, made with stolen funds from a joint account without spousal consent. I smiled, cold as winter morning. Ask your husband the engineer about structural integrity. When the foundation is compromised, the whole building comes down. I reached into my purse one final time, producing 3 sealed envelopes, each labeled with precise handwriting. Envelope 1, I said, placing it on the table, contains the stop payment order for First Maple Bank. It's already been submitted electronically with a confirmation number. The physical copy is just a formality. As of 8:17 p.m. tonight, that check is worthless paper. Bianca's sharp intake of breath was audible. Her hand moved toward the envelope but stopped halfway, as if it might burn her. Envelope 2, I continued, setting down the next one, is addressed to Harborline Freight's Internal Audit Department. It details the misuse of company time for personal financial transactions, complete with timestamps showing Ethan conducting a $45,000 personal transfer during business hours. There's also an interesting pattern of Tuesday afternoon absences that correlate with significant personal expenses. Ethan's face had gone from red to white, the implications cascading through his expression. And envelope 3, I placed the final one directly in front of Marcus, is for you. Copies of everything, plus contact information for Dana Whitaker, my attorney. She's excellent with high-asset divorces involving financial infidelity. I thought you might need the referral. Marcus picked up the envelope, turning it over in his hands like an artifact from a future he hadn't imagined. You can't do this, Ethan said, but it came out as a plea rather than a statement. My job. Your job is the least of your problems. I pulled out my phone, showing him the screen. I've also frozen our joint accounts as of 6:45 this evening. Individual holds on all joint credit cards for suspected fraud. You'll need to explain to the bank why you withdrew $45,000 without your spouse's knowledge or consent. That's not fraud, it's a joint account. Intent to conceal assets during contemplation of divorce is absolutely fraud. Dana was very clear about that. I swiped to another screen. I've also password protected all streaming services, changed the security codes on our investment platforms, and removed you as an authorized user on my personal credit cards. Your phone bill, by the way, is set to auto-pay from the frozen joint checking. That should be an interesting conversation with Verizon on Monday. The room felt smaller, the cafe lights suddenly oppressive rather than charming. Bianca was crying now, silent tears that she didn't bother to wipe away. Marcus sat stone still, the envelope in his hands unopened but clearly weighing on him. The email to your office, I said to Ethan, hasn't been sent yet. It's scheduled for Monday. You have 36 hours to submit your own resignation with whatever explanation saves the most face. After that, internal audit gets everything. You're destroying my life, he whispered. No, I'm returning it to its rightful owner. You destroyed our marriage the moment you decided Bianca's financial crisis was more important than our future. I turned to Bianca. The mortgage default is public record. Your neighbors already know. Your friends will know soon enough. But whether Marcus stays to help you figure it out, that's between you two. Please? Bianca reached for my hand across the table. I pulled back. The house will lose everything. You already lost everything the moment you accepted that check. You just hadn't admitted it yet. I stood, adjusting my coat with deliberate calm. You know what the saddest part is. If you'd just asked if either of you had been honest about needing help, we might have actually helped. As friends. With proper agreements and legitimate terms. Instead, you turned it into this. Marcus finally spoke, his voice rough. Did you ever actually, physically? He couldn't finish the question, but Ethan's guilty glance toward Bianca was answer enough. Chicago, Marcus said. Not a question, but a confirmation. The weekend I was at my mother's funeral. The temperature in the room dropped another degree. I hadn't known that detail, but it explained the $1,200 room service bill. They'd been celebrating or consoling while Marcus buried his mother. "Get out," Marcus said quietly. Then louder, standing, "Get out." Ethan scrambled to his feet. "Marcus, let me explain. Get out of my house." Bianca reached for her husband. "Baby, please." He shrugged off her touch, pointing to the door. "You can stay. For tonight. Tomorrow. You figure out somewhere else to be while I decide what happens next." I was already at the door when Ethan caught my arm. "Nora, wait. We can fix this. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. What I want is a husband who doesn't steal $45,000 for his mistress." I pulled free of his grip. "What I want is Tuesday afternoons without wondering what lies you're constructing over overpriced salads. What I want is to never have to apologize for your betrayal again." "Where am I supposed to go tonight?" "That's no longer my problem. Maybe Bianca can recommend a bridge loan for a hotel room." I walked out into the March evening, the door closing on the sound of Marcus's voice, low and dangerous, asking questions that Ethan and Bianca would have to answer without scripts or safety nets. My phone buzzed with texts before I reached my car. "Ethan, this isn't over." I blocked his number. Ethan from his work phone. "You're making a mistake." Blocked. "Bianca, please reconsider the check. We'll pay you back." I screenshot that one for Dana, admission of debt in writing, then blocked her too. The last text was from Marcus. "Thank you for the truth." I didn't reply, but I didn't block him either. He'd need time to process what came next. We all would. Sitting in my car, I canceled the scheduled email to our friend group. They'd find out soon enough through the inevitable gossip chain. Instead, I sent a single message to Dana. "Meeting concluded as planned. File everything Monday at 9 a.m. sharp." Her response was immediate. "Already calendared. Stop payment confirmation received from bank. Initial restraining order for asset protection ready. You did the right thing." I sat for a moment in the driveway of the house where I'd just detonated 4 lives with truth and documentation. Through the window, I could see shadows moving, voices raised but indistinct. Marcus stood alone by the bar cart. Bianca and Ethan were on opposite sides of the room, the $45,000 check suddenly worthless as the paper it was printed on. The banker had been right. Cashier's checks were as good as cash, until they weren't. Until someone with proof of fraud and the courage to use it made them nothing more than expensive evidence of betrayal. I drove away, leaving behind the wreckage of twisted friendships and a marriage built on lies. In my rearview mirror, the Rhodes house grew smaller, the cafe lights still twinkling like stars over a disaster zone. My phone, now silent with all the blocked numbers, sat peacefully in the cup holder. For the first time in months, I didn't wonder who Ethan was texting or what Bianca was planning. I knew exactly where everyone stood, and more importantly, I knew where I was going. Forward. Alone. Free. The $45,000 would be recovered through the divorce proceedings. The house we'd never buy together would become the apartment I'd choose myself. The Tuesday afternoons would be mine again. All it had cost was an apology, just not the one Ethan had expected. The drive home took 17 minutes. I counted each one, marking the transition from who I'd been to who I was becoming. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, lipstick still perfect. Eyes clear. No tears. The woman looking back at me was a stranger I was ready to know. The condo was exactly as I'd left it, except now it felt different. Lighter. The spaces Ethan had occupied seemed to breathe again, his coffee mug on the counter, his jacket on the hall hook, his presence everywhere and nowhere. I walked through each room, seeing it with new eyes. This would be mine alone, at least until the divorce settlement. I poured myself a glass of wine, the good Burgundy we'd been saving for a special occasion, and stood at the window overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, Ethan was discovering that his credit cards didn't work, that his carefully constructed life had been built on foundations I controlled. Somewhere, Marcus was staring at evidence of betrayal, calculating whether anything could be salvaged, Somewhere, Bianca was realizing that $45,000 in worthless paper couldn't save a house or a marriage. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, then recognized the last 4 digits Marcus's work phone. "Thank you," he said without preamble. "For doing what I couldn't. You knew. I suspected. But suspicion isn't proof. You gave me proof. What will you do?" A long pause. "File on Monday. Same as you, Dana Whitaker. You said, 'She's excellent.'" "Good." Another pause. "The check, did you really stop payment?" 8:17 p.m. Confirmation number stored in 3 places. He actually laughed, short and bitter. "Thorough. I learned that marriage is a business partnership. I just forgot to audit my partner." "Nora." His voice softened. "I'm sorry. For all of it." "Me too. Marcus. Me too." After we hung up, I made a list. Change locks tomorrow. Open new bank accounts. Forward mail. Update beneficiaries. The mundane logistics of severing a life felt oddly satisfying. Each item a small act of reclamation. Ethan showed up at 11:23 p.m., using his key before remembering I'd lied about changing the locks. I heard him in the hallway, fumbling with the lock that still worked, confusion in his muttered cursing. "Nora." He called out when he entered. "Nora, we need to talk." I met him in the living room, keeping the kitchen island between us like a barricade. "There's nothing to discuss. Dana will handle all communication going forward." "You can't be serious about this." He looked disheveled, tie gone, shirt untucked. "One mistake. One $45,000 mistake, plus about 7,000 in smaller ones, plus 2 years of gaslighting me into thinking I was crazy for noticing. It wasn't like that. Tuesday, Copper Finch, 12 to 2:30, every week." I counted on my fingers. Client dinners that weren't, weekend conferences for one, emergency texts about fake accounts. Should I continue? He slumped against the counter. "Where am I supposed to sleep?" "Not my problem. But you have 10 minutes to pack a bag before I call the police about trespassing." "This is my home too." Was past tense. The divorce filing includes an emergency order of exclusive occupancy given the financial fraud. Dana filed it electronically at 9:30. "You've officially been served." His phone buzzed, then again, and again. "That would be your credit cards declining," I said helpfully. Or maybe Bianca wondering why her $45,000 check is now worthless. Or possibly Marcus, though I doubt he's in a talking mood. "You've destroyed everything." "No, I revealed everything. There's a difference." He packed in 8 minutes. I timed it. A duffel bag of clothes, his laptop, the watch I'd given him for our anniversary. He paused at the door. "I loved you," he said. "You loved the idea of me. The wife who'd stay quiet, who'd apologize for your sins, who'd keep your secrets while you gave away our future." I opened the door wider. That woman doesn't exist anymore. After he left, I did change the locks. The 24-hour locksmith arrived at 12:45 a.m., efficient and discreet. By 1:30, I had new keys and the first real security I'd felt in months. Sunday morning arrived with sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten could be so bright. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Ethan's work number, 3 from unknown numbers that were probably him, and 1 voicemail from my mother that I'd return later. After the news spread, Dana texted at 9 sharp. "All filings complete. Freeze on joint assets confirmed. Stop payment processed by bank. Exclusive occupancy order active. You're free to move forward." Free to move forward. The phrase echoed as I made coffee my coffee. My choice. My morning. At 10, I drove past Copperfinch Bistro. Their Sunday brunch crowd was gathering, couples and families claiming tables that tomorrow would return to business lunches and casual betrayals. Table 12, visible through the window, sat empty. It would stay that way on Tuesdays now. I thought about the check, probably still in Ethan's shirt pocket or maybe crumpled in Bianca's purse. $45,000 reduced to worthless paper and broken trust. The banker had said cashier's checks were as good as cash, guaranteed funds that couldn't bounce, but he hadn't mentioned they could be stopped, frozen, turned into evidence of the exact moment a marriage ended, not with arguments or tears, but with serial numbers and timestamps. My phone buzzed. Sarah, my real estate friend. Heard about you and Ethan. If you need anything. The gossip network was faster than I'd expected, but I wasn't ready for sympathy or speculation. Instead, I drove to the park where Ethan had proposed 7 years ago, sitting on the same bench where he'd knelt with a ring and promises he wouldn't keep. A couple passed by, wedding bands catching the light, hands intertwined. Once, I would have envied them. Now I saw the potential for both happiness and devastation, for truth and deception, for checks written in secret and apologies demanded from the wrong person. "Excuse me," the woman said, pausing near my bench. "Would you mind taking our photo?" I accepted her phone, framing them against the lake where Ethan had promised forever. They smiled, genuine and hopeful, and I captured that moment before handing it back. "Beautiful couple," I said, meaning it. 3 years next month. The man beamed. "Any advice?" I thought of Tuesday lunches and $45,000 secrets, of gaslighting disguised as concern and boundaries dismissed as jealousy, of sitting in Bianca's living room with evidence spread like tarot cards, revealing a future none of us had expected. "Trust your instincts," I finally said. "And always check the shirt pockets before doing laundry." They laughed, thinking it was a joke about tissues or forgotten receipts, but I was serious. The smallest discoveries could reveal the biggest betrayals. A check could tell a story that 2 years of lies had tried to hide. I walked back to my car, my choice, my direction. Tomorrow, Dana would continue the divorce proceedings. Ethan would face questions at work. Bianca would scramble to save a house built on other people's money. Marcus would begin his own journey toward freedom. But tonight, I would sleep in sheets that smelled only of my chosen detergent, in a bed that held no lies, in a home where no one would ever again demand I apologize for their betrayal. The check had changed everything, not because of the money, though $45,000 was no small sum, but because it was proof that some things couldn't be explained away, gaslit into acceptance, or buried under demands for apology. Some truths, once written in bank-verified ink, couldn't be unwritten. I started the car, leaving the park and the bench and the ghost of promises behind. In my rearview mirror, the couple was taking a selfie, capturing their happiness while it was still untested. I hoped they'd never need to learn what I had, that the best apology is sometimes the one you refuse to give, and that $45,000 in the wrong hands can be worth more than a marriage, but only if you let it. Tonight, I hadn't let it. Tonight, I'd won. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts below. Your experiences and perspectives make this community special. Until next time, remember, trust your instincts and never apologize for someone else's betrayal.